South Sudan's government has decided to delay the country's first election since gaining independence in 2011. Now, the elections were supposed to happen this year, but they will now be held in 2 years' time. This decision was made because some important tasks like writing a new constitution haven't been completed yet. Now, the government wants to make sure that everything is in place before holding the elections. The delay might seem like a bad thing, but the government believes that it is necessary to maintain peace and stability in the country. Now, let's hear more from our guest. With me to discuss this evening is Dr. David Matsanga, African Affairs Analyst in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Hello, Dr. Matsanga. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether I'm in the right position, but thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you. All right,
okay?
So, Doc, I said it's a pleasure to have you, Dr. Matsanga. So go ahead and tell us, Doctor, how does the extension of the transitional period, align with the revitalized peace agreement signed in 2018? And generally, your thoughts on the extension of the elections?
Thank you very much. I have been one of the few people who has been calling on the people of South Sudan and the President of the Republic of the South Sudan, plus his all 5 vice presidents and others, to postpone the elections, because the state of South Sudan is in a complete fragile state. There are so many things that have taken place. There are so many commitments that have not been fulfilled. The constitution has not been written, readjusted. The electoral systems have not been put in place. The education, voter education, insecurity around the entire country of South Sudan is really, really rampant. So I have been one of those people who has been very, very, very vocal and telling the world, let's postpone these elections, because if you take one of the things in this election and conduct an election now, there will be a war after this, because people will not accept the results of the elections. Already the Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar, is not very comfortable. His organization says this has not been well conducted. Let's push it. So
yeah. Speaking of the Vice President, Dr. Matsanga, now that was supposed to be my next question. Will the extension impact the balance of power within the unity government, particularly between President Kiir and Vice President Machar?
You know very well there is another faction or several factions meeting in Nairobi. We have several of them. One of the some of the groups are meeting in Nairobi, brokered by the Kenya government. President William Ruto has brokered another peace deal, which is taking place, and it is taking place to sign agreement, to agree as to whether they should join the government in Juba and then make up a full-fledged government of South Sudan. The question that stands firm, and that I want to tell you as an expert on this region, I have been there, I know all the people, key players of this country, from the president to the vice president to all the other 4 presidents who make the presidential, consortium, and others who are outside. I know them because I did discuss peace process in Sudan myself when we are doing the Uganda peace process. Let me tell you frankly, there is something wrong that was done in the Sudan peace process. Accountability. The sticking point here is accountability. If you are doing a peace process anywhere on planet Earth, one thing that stands out is accountability. There has never been accountability of how people died, how many died, who killed them, what do we do from here? People want to resolve that conflict, that problem, and put it behind, then move on as a group. But the accountability issue is missing. And the Vice President, Riek Machar, seemed to be saying, let's do accountability first. Over 340,000 people were mowed down, were killed. 340,000 people. We cannot just walk around and say we are doing this, we are doing a peace process, we are doing that. let's address the issue of accountability. And that is, once you address the issue of accountability, then you come back, everybody will be settled on table, like we have done several peace agreements across Africa.
Now, I'm sure it's not just the Vice President Machado actually has, something to say about this. But then, what about other political actors? How will the extension influence their behavior? And I'm talking including opposition parties and civil society organizations.
I think it gives them a breathing space, my dear sister. It is a breathing space they are getting. If we pushed South Sudan to an election in December, we were going to create a conflict, one of the worst conflicts again. Already, Dr. Riek Machar does not move out of Juba. He seemed to be either under house arrest or something. Nobody has told me what it is. I have been trying to find out. I've called him several times. I want to find out why is it that he is not moving out of Juba. How can you have one key player not allowed to move in the country? Then how are you resolving the conflict? You cannot resolve the conflict when one person is not allowed to exercise the full rights of an agreement that was already signed. So that is a sticking point. Another sticking point is, have you made changes on the constitution? What do you want? Some parties outside want inclusion. Some parties want changes in the constitution first before we go to the table. So these are the things that anybody trying to resolve the conflict of South Sudan must first begin looking at all those areas. And then the geopolitical situation that we have, there is already a looming war between Ethiopia and Egypt. There is a war down near Somalia. There are quite a number in DRC Congo. Things are not very, Central African Republic, which borders to South Sudan, things are not very good. Therefore, things seem to be very complicated for the government. This was indeed a breathing space, my sister, for people to go back, start doing all this voter education, accountability, which is the sticking point, and get money. They don't have the money to hold elections. How are you going to hold elections when you don't have money? The international community has not given Sudan money. We have just stopped the war, but we have not stopped giving the instruments, the machinery that can change the things. The soldiers that were put in containment areas for DDR, some of them have left with their guns. They have gone home. The conflict seems to be slowly building back and coming back. These are some of the issues that IGAD and other organizations of other organizations like African Union and others who are involved in the peace process should sit down.
All right, Mr. Matsanga. Now, while you're actually speaking on this, I would love for you to tell us if you feel that the extension would have negative economic implications or impacts on South Sudan's development and growth, because as you have said, that at the moment they cannot even hold an election because they have no money.
They don't have money even if it is not an election. The question of money for paying salaries, the question of money for paying troops, the question of money for paying the peace process itself, education, making sure that the people are resettled, reparations, people have to go back home. You need a redemption strategy that can create a climate better for elections. But there is no international community. I call upon the international community to come and help South Sudan. It is high time we stood out as Africans and called, be bold. Let's be bold. Let's stand like a Nyerere. This country where I am now. Nyerere stood up and said certain things in Africa must work. Nyerere is God. I am here. I am one of the disciples of Nyerere telling you, as Africans, stand up. Let's say South Sudan has no money. It needs money to conduct and to fulfill the promises of the peace process. Let's give them the money. The Americans are heaping sanctions on South Sudan every day. Now, HIP sanctions on a country that has no money. It can't pay salaries of the soldiers. It can't pay salaries for themselves. It can't pay salaries for even any voter education. We have a problem here. And if we don't resolve it, it can again go back to a war zone, to a war area where people will go back to sort it out through violence.
All right. Now, Dr. Matsanga, I know you've made some valid points as to why you feel the elections should not hold and why you're in support, of the 2-year space that has been given. But don't you think that there might be some form of implications of not holding elections since independence in 2011, and it might actually impact the country's democratic development as well?
That is what sparked the war in the first place. Doctor, you are right. Dr. Yakamacha and others wanted the reforms within the SPLA, and that brought up a big differences. This country has never held any democratic elections since independence. But it is better to delay the elections. It is better to delay the process. It is better to delay than to create a new war. If we delay for all parties to come, for all these things, for the international community to call a donor conference. Let's call it a donor conference. I am very successful and I'm very lucky to report to you, my dear sister, that next door of Sudan, you interviewed me again. You have very good luck that you interviewed me across, and we got United Nations troops are going to come. And I said it on your television, and I have been vindicated. They must come to reinforce the agreement. Here in South Sudan, we need a very serious donor funding. We need a donor conference that can bring money for the people, not only for elections, for food, humanitarian catastrophe. The rains, the sunshine, it rains, it is sunshine. The oil cannot now go to Port Sudan, where there is a war. It is a war zone. This country is in chaos. This country is caught up in catch-22. So you cannot force them to go to an election. You will be a madman to force South Sudan to say, let's go and vote. You are just, you are now causing a war that you will not manage to silence. It's better to keep some time, briefing space, give them some money, give them on some guidelines. Make sure that everybody knows what type of elections is going through. Make sure that you give them a level ground for everybody to campaign, to be voted in. But at the moment, if you have some people detained in their houses, if you have some people have no say, how are they going to campaign? That is where the question is.
All right, Dr. Matsanga, you did say that, the country is in chaos. And we also know that, it's been plagued by political conflicts and also communal violence. And you did say that if they should actually go for, if the elections were allowed to hold, that it's going to be marred with more violence as well. But what about, the country's prospects for permanent peace? What do you see?
Elusive, very elusive. Because we have not done one thing, my sister, I want to tell you, and this is something you must take it to the bank. Anybody claiming, pretending to be doing a peace process without one word called accountability, you are doing something that the world has never done before. You can't do a peace process without accountability. Accountability is agenda number 5. Accountability is to find out how next these things should not come. Who did what? Are these crimes? We want to stop them. What is the mechanism? Local justice, alternative mechanisms of finding long-lasting peace, like going back to people to seek reconciliation, going back to tell people that I killed people. I killed 200,000, but I'm sorry, forgive me, let's move on and make a better Sudan. There are people who have never seen their parents. There are people who have never seen their children, their fathers, their mothers. There are people who still want to know what happened to their loved ones. This has not been brought to a closure. So if you have not brought it to a closure, a situation like that one, it will explode. So there is no need of pushing for an election when a situation of that nature is going to explode. So the consequences of not holding an election now are bad. They are high. The high, almost 100%. A conflict will occur after that elections. Than to postpone, do all this. Let IGAD come down and sit down with the people of Sudan. Bring in new changes. There is another group, other groups in Nairobi still discussing.
Okay. Aside IGAD now, what about other regional organizations like the African Union? What role can they play in supporting Sudan's security and stability?
You talk about the African Union. I've told you here, Madam, my dear sister Osman, African Union is dead. Is captured. Is captured by the French. It's gone. We needed to have a new African Union. And I'm here, I'm campaigning for one man. And that man is the candidate that I want to take African Union. A man who calls it enough is enough. Raila Amolo Odinga of Kenya will stand firm and say, no, we want peace in Sudan. He understands the problems of Africa. He understands what root causes of Africa. He has been in the trenches before. That is the type of African Union chairperson we are looking for. But if we are going to bring French cronies and place them in African Union again, we shall never have Libya having independence. We shall never have Sudan, South Sudan having peace. We shall never have Congo with peace, because all these territories I'm mentioning, the French have encroached in and created chaos in DRC Congo, created chaos in Libya. And then we are captured. African Union, you are talking about what? Talk about somebody like a European Union, they can bring money. But the African Union is an empty shell that the chairperson from Chad was making money to go back and contest for presidency in Chad. Unfortunately, he might not get it. So he's just going. He's on his way going. He has left us in chaos. There's no African Union. What is it doing? You show me. Since this man took over African Union, this guy has multiplied more wars than any other chairperson in that place. How many wars have come? How many military coups have come? His role is to wear suits and tall councils and walk around the world. That is the chairperson of African Union. Yet, he has not solved a single war. Tell me one single war. Somalia, we still have Somalia as if it is a permanent thing for us on African continent. We have countries like Somalia, like Nigeria. Your place, what has African Union helped Nigeria to remove the insecurity that we have in Maiduguri areas in the north, in Kano, where terrorists are killing people in hundreds, where terrorists are kidnapping people in the Sahara region? We have problems. African Union, it has been captured. And we need to bring it back.
All right, Dr. Matsanga, we hear you there. Now, can you give us your final thoughts in 1 minute, just before we wrap up?
Thank you very much. First of all, viewers, I have been campaigning for this election of South Sudan to be extended. I want to thank the president of South Sudan. I want to thank Dr. Riek Machar and others. And I want to thank the people in Nairobi who are doing the peace process in Kenya. Please speed up the peace process so that you can go back, do accountability. If you can't do accountability, tell us what we can do. We are not saying we are punishing people in accountability. We are simply saying, let's have accountability. Let people rest the cases that their parents went, their brothers went, their mothers were killed, their fathers were killed. Over 300,000 and 40,000 people went down. People mauled people, killed people in cold blood. And we have not seen, we are not saying we want to punish them or take them to prison. We want them to come and remorsefully say, we are very sorry. We killed people, but we are sorry. We are here. We want a new Sudan, South Sudan. We want to reconcile. Less than that, if they don't do accountability, it will remain a sticking point.
Of course, Dr. David Matsanga, thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us on this.
Thank you very much, Osman. Thank you today for this type of interview. Let's have more and more discussion on Africa, on any country. I'm always ready to give you my analysis.
It's a pleasure, sir.